Good afternoon. I'm really pleased to have a conversation with two of the world's most thoughtful and impactful leaders examining one of the world's most crucial innovation challenges and opportunities. That's the future at the nexus of energy, food, and water. First, we have joining us Dr. Renee Lammers, the Executive Vice President and the Chief Science Officer at PepsiCo, and one of our national commissioners serving on the Council's National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers. And we're also joined by Dr. Robert Johnson, the president of Western New England University, and also one of our distinguished national commissioners. Thank you both for being with us this afternoon, Renee and Robert. And let's just dive right into this very complicated and very broad topic. And I'd like to get your insights on how the United States can leverage and engage this innovation space for long-term competitive advantage. Now, we all know water's properties are useful for things like producing energy, and energy is required to treat and distribute water for human use and food and agricultural production. And yet, one of the greatest challenges that we're facing lies really at the very nexus of this energy and food and water equation. And we know that due to population and economic growth, global energy use is going to soar and could soar nearly 50% by 2050, driving further rise in energy-related carbon emissions. And by 2050, we may also need to produce anywhere from 60, and some say even 100% more food to feed a world population approaching 9 billion. And today, globally, we already know that 72% of all water withdrawals are for agricultural use. But billions of people today live in areas that are already experiencing water shortages and even water stress. So Renee and Robert, I'd like to ask you, as you look into your own crystal balls, what innovations are emerging that could enable greater sustainability in energy, agriculture, and food production without inducing further water stress? What new solutions are emerging? And Renee, perhaps I could turn to you first.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you for having me. It's a broad topic indeed. I think there's a continued and collective drive from all actors across the value chains to create more from less. And some great examples are getting commercialized of using resources more effectively and with greater efficiency. Maybe, examples like precision irrigation is one of them. And I think technology innovations that get connected to improved agricultural management systems will add further in value, such as precision irrigation tools I just mentioned, in combination with, let's say, scheduling tools that are tailored to crop water needs, for instance. So driving layered solutions creates larger impact, as does integrating these solutions. So it's sort of technology layering, if you like. And forgive me to be a little bit specific, but PepsiCo, company I work for, develops its own potato varieties for a brand you may all know, Lay's. And in the 10 years from 2011, we have successfully elevated yields such that we can reduce farmed acres, save water, reduce inputs, and remove energy demand from the system. And in water use alone, our varieties return a saving of more than 7 billion gallons annually as a result of those breeding and commercialization efforts. Yeah. So I think innovations that are connected across variety, production practices, and farming systems are a powerful way to move the needle on more from less. This means better varieties that need less inputs, crop management tools that predict or forecast what crops will do, and when inputs are needed, that will further optimize production and minimizing waste. I think these innovations are starting to add value. Back to you, Chad.
Renee, Robert, before I turn to you, Renee, just a quick question. I'm intrigued with tech layering and the example you gave around potatoes. And I'm wondering, are you learning lessons from that potato example that you're beginning to scale in other product lines or in other parts of your business?
Well, maybe another example I can give in terms of the innovations I just mentioned. For instance, oat is another crop, which is an important crop for us for our Quaker brand. Mm-hmm. And as an example of how practices can be used with varieties to deliver better outcomes is what we call the Opti Oat platform, which is actually a digital crop intelligence platform that can identify fields that support higher protein outcomes in the grain without more nitrogen fertilizer. So it's sort of these digital solutions that we are increasingly seeing also using across our broader crop system, if you like.
In addition to what Renee just spoke to, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this panel with Renee. He is such a thought leader in this space. One of the things that comes to mind is artificial photosynthesis. The storing of energy from sunlight, and I think that creates enormous possibilities when you talk about layering technology one on top of the other. It creates tremendous opportunities from an innovation perspective. And to the extent that we can figure out ways to democratize that, if you will, in creating an ecosystem within regions, instead of the importing of virtual water, if you will, which I'll speak to more later in our session, I think creates tremendous opportunities. I think carbon capture systems, storage systems, for example, would be another example of innovations that can provide us this unique way of utilizing water in a more efficient way, because food and energy do compete with one another for the utilization of water, and it is a very, very fascinating phenomenon when you think about it. And the water is limited when all is said and done. Those are a couple of thoughts that come to mind right off the top of my head.
Well, Robert, I'm going to push you there. You ended on the point about limited water, but you teased us with this idea of virtual water. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what you mean there. And then I wonder if I could open up to both of you around this concept of democratizing these technologies and innovations, and what you see that process looking like in encouraging and driving U.S. productivity, U.S. innovation, U.S. competitiveness.
So when you look at the inequity of food and agriculture across the globe, there are regions and parts of the world where we have people who are consuming more food than their fresh water system allows them to produce. So as a result, they import their food. When they import that food, one of the things that comes from that is that the water that was produced to produce that food, say in the United States, to ship it to some other part of the country, there was water utilized. So virtually they're using water from another part of the planet so that they can consume more food than they have fresh water to produce in their own region.
I think that democratization is an important point, and I think, and I don't know whether we're going to discuss it on the next question, but I think also how we are going to move the agenda forward, I think it's important. The collaboration piece, I think, is something we should dive a little bit deeper in, maybe in your next question.
Yeah. Well, let's do that. Renee, you've sort of foreshadowed what I think I wanted to get to. I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C. today, and we know we're all following around the country the actions of the Biden administration and leaders on the Hill that are looking at planning significant expansion and investments related to clean energy and other measures to improve our sustainability. And so I'm wondering if both of you, from where you're sitting, whether regionally or within your own organization, what do you see as being a key leverage point for investment in this nation to ensure that we achieve the greatest gains to meet the challenges that you've all described, actually the opportunities you've described, if we really address this intersection of energy, food, and water?
So, as I think about it, I think wind power is a frontier and an opportunity for the United States. Being here in Massachusetts and us being right off of the coast, down in the New Bedford area, and of course, all and up and down the eastern seaboard, wind energy and wind power and the power of the sea and other renewable energies as well create tremendous opportunities. Of course, solar power and hydropower as well. And I think that creating a different kind of information highway with grids for electric vehicles all across the country is going to be essential, because we have to move away from fossil fuels. Someone who grew up in Detroit when I think about a 25 gallons of gas going into an SUV, utilizes enough water, if you will, that could feed and grow food for one person for an entire year. It says to me we have to do something different.
That's an incredible equation. Renee, any thoughts or reactions to what you heard from Robert, or some of your own?
I totally agree with Robert just said. I'd like to take it in a slightly different direction in terms of to truly enable, I think, these technology solutions and address those complex challenges at this nexus you just described. I do believe that we must take a systems level approach and embrace the notion of new partnership models. So this is more about a how,
Yes.
Creating new knowledge tools that activates R&D is key. And that means being more agile in operating in pre-competitive spaces that activate benefits through value chains. Expanding public-private partnerships will be key, and creating focus on problems and federate knowledge into the hands of those who can innovate different solution sets. So after all, we're likely to need many solutions to tailor unlocks in different environments and localities, and even in new supply models. So I also think we should not only focus on the what, but on the how. And I just give you an example of that. And hey, listen, we have a very modest example of what we do in our own industry. We worked with Corteva, one of the best agri-science companies there is, and we actually sequenced the full oat, the genomic code of the oat, and we put it out there in the public domain so that other people can actually benefit from it, from that knowledge that we put out there. So it's also a how rather than the what. I have one specific plug for where we should probably put a little bit more investment, and that is around basic food science. I do believe that is an area where we still have very significant unlocks to go for and to go after, and a step up in investment in there would be highly appropriate in my humble opinion.
Renee, thanks for that. Well, I love this idea. We began with the why, and we are ending with the hows and the what. Robert, any last word before we wrap up?
I think that smart farming is going to become more and more important. And I think that to the extent, I know we have big farms, mega farms all over the world, but if we begin to think about this very, very fundamental principle of agroecology and creating ecosystems with local farms in various regions all across the world, we could literally improve the yield anywhere from 50 to 100% and consuming significantly less water. And if we think about doing things of that nature, the world will be a better place. We have to democratize this back to the very, very basic levels wherever we can, using smart robots, if you will, to do farming and agriculture. And that's not to take away from the big farms, but we can't continue to utilize virtual water across the globe.
Robert, Renee, I want to thank you both for sharing your ideas and solutions, really at the heart of this very intricate equation, as we talked about from the beginning, of energy, food, and water. And I know as we look forward to 2022 with our National Commission, I look forward to working with you both on unpacking more of these ideas. But thank you for being with us today at the National Competitiveness Forum.
Thank you,
Chad.